Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Harley Quinn. Great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Immediately picking up where the last episode left off, I do think it's such an interesting dynamic that Harley and Ivy find themselves in, because it has been this whole thing of, yes, Harley's been Ivy's biggest cheerleader, but it's also like, no, I don't. Not only that you were my supporter, you also wanted this too. But it is that complicated thing of Harley just simply wanted to go along with what Ivy wanted to, because, I mean, to be fair, she has a lot of psychological trauma from her relationship with Joker, and it's like, right, if we don't, I have to want what you want, and Harley didn't even recognize it. And once again, it's always harder to recognize stuff inside of yourself, but obviously, you know, that's kind of a whole point over the course of this, but the fact that she just wants what Ivy wants, and now it's kind of like coming in conflict with what she wants, because she has changed so much into like, oh, I don't want to just follow someone else's lead, especially if it compromises a little of who I want and what I think Harley was just so caught up in, like, oh, I love Ivy so much that I don't want to go against her plan. And that's what a relationship's all about. It's about compromise. For one, you don't always have to 100% agree on things. So I actually was like, oh, that's a really, I do love that. And that has been actually a really, because I'm sure someone would just kind of like shove it off of like, oh, like it's an animated show, but it's like, that's some really like deep stuff that like a lot of stuff doesn't really, especially TV shows, don't really go into the intricacies of a relationship. There is some give and take, and obviously this is like very hyperbolized, but there's a lot of like psychological like elements there of like, right, like Harley, they've butted heads a little bit here and there, because both her and Ivy have had to move past a lot of past traumas when it comes to relationships and stuff, to kind of like, it's like a lot of their baggage that they're carrying into this relationship. And now like, it's literally not just like an internalized thing either. It's kind of personified now, because now they've literally, Harley stopped the plan that Ivy wanted. It's like, this is something I was aiming for. I thought we were aiming for, and you got my way. Why? And it's like, I'm sorry. It's just, you're going to kill like all the people in Gotham, and now she's getting celebrated as a hero. This lady's almost like, oh, like she's a president or something. Like, oh, here's my baby, kiss my baby. And it's like, I'm not the hero. Like, I wasn't trying to be the hero. It's just, this is what I wanted to do. And, you know, it's like, oh, I guess we could always just sit down and talk this out, which Barbara wants to do. But Harley's like, no, we're not going to do that. You know, so she's in this complicated space, and now Ivy is kind of feeling down about it, because the Eden plan failed for a third time. Now it's also because it's like, right, your girlfriend's the one that kind of blew it up in your face. Because you were kind of ready to let this go until Harley was like, no, we'll do it. So she kind of hyped you up to this point. And then eventually it gets to the situation of, hey, Lex wants to invite you to not only to the Legion of Doom, he wants you to lead the Legion of Doom. He's like, yeah, it basically made me shit my pants. She's like, wow, you never do that. He's like, it's true, I don't. Well, I didn't. So it's like, right, you'll have complete autonomy, be able to run it however you want to. And it's like, okay, I'm feeling myself on this. So now Harley trying to overcorrect with this whole situation is like, okay, I'll do whatever you need me to do. And they're like, let's kill the Joker, which obviously for Harley, it's like, well, that's not out to the realm of the possibility. It's like, yeah, let's do it. Like, fuck the Joker, let's kill him, you know? And they're going to the premiere of the Wayne's Harder Fall, whatever the title to the movie is. They said it so many times in the episode. They showed it so many times in the episode, yet I'm still blanking on it. Poor Clayface, too, because he was nervous about everything until it really, really hit him that it's like, oh my God, no one's ever going to know it's me playing Billy Bob Thornton, playing Thomas Wayne. He's going to be the one that gets all the credit, not me. And it's like, oh, but isn't that what an actor's supposed to do? Disappear into the role? And he's like, I'm going to break this news to you, King Shark, but thespians, they're vain. And King Shark's like, oh my God. It's like, okay, I see the commentary there. But it's like, I mean, truth be told is, no, everyone's vain to some extent. I'm not just going to put that on actors. Like, everyone wants to be attributed to their work. You want to be good at something. You know, like, we all have that inside of us, like, where everyone wants people to like something that they do. You know, it's like, oh, I want, we all got that vain side of us, you know? But I just think it's a very human element, you know? And so it now hitting Clayface like, man, I won't get any recognition for this. At the same time, Bruce is like, okay, I think I'm ready to deal with my trauma. And then it's like, cool, you got the tickets to the movie premiere dropped off. You're seeing everything in the sky. There's flyers everywhere saying like, oh my God, check out this movie about your parents' brutal murder that kind of traumatized you. And you're still dealing with it 30 years later. Lack thereof, dealing with it 30 years later. So we never actually found out. I guess maybe he took Barbara, because we never found out who we didn't find out who he actually took to the premiere. He definitely didn't take Alfred, which is kind of like a slap to the face. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna probably go get dressed, by myself. So it's like, well, after he did all this, burying your dead parents for you, which a really quick detail I thought was kind of pretty neat is in the credits, the name for the actress who plays Martha Wayne is Rita Farr. I'm like, hey, that's so cool. But there's actually layers to that reference, because it's kind of effed up, because it's like, oh, Rita literally got no lines. And I'm sure that's kind of a commentary of like, Martha typically gets pushed to the background. Like Thomas, I think at least most comic book people, at least from what I've heard in the past, has always been like, yeah, Thomas and Martha never really got much limelight. It's almost like your only purpose is to basically die so Bruce becomes Batman. Well, unless you're going Flashpoint. I think Flashpoint's probably one of the first storylines to really kind of twist that element of making there be more. But it's almost like, yeah, but the only difference is like Thomas and Martha's stories are basically hijacking someone else's story, but it's kind of like a twist on, their routes of like her possibly becoming the Joker and Thomas becoming the Batman instead of Bruce. Regardless, right? But like, there's layers to it, because it's like Rita, you feel bad that she's in a movie and she has no speaking lines. Because I want to say, was it Frank that was like, Martha hasn't said a word, has she? And I was like, oh, that. But like I said, I think there's commentary of like, right, the movie's so focused on Thomas Wayne that she's just kind of like, sadly, like, I think there's that little wink and being cheekiness of like, yeah, she's just kind of even further in the background, Well, because I know that the Canes have their own place and things, but I don't even know amongst the Canes, like, what Martha's story is. Like, I've heard someone talk about, like, because of, Kane's story in the comics and the complication between the Kane family and the Waynes, but I don't know how much that really comes up for Martha herself in the comics. That might just be like a family thing and might not necessarily really be a her and Thomas thing. That might just be their family's thing. So that's more about their families and less about them themselves. I don't know. I just thought that was just kind of an interesting thing. But I also thought was an interesting layered reference. I'm spending a lot of time on this because I think just my mind is just like thinking about it so much. It's like, well, she's Elastic Woman or Elastic. I'm never sure like what that whatever case may be. It's like, but so it's interesting that Clayface is pretending to be him being Clayface's circumstances and Rita's circumstances. There's just an interesting parallel there. It's like, oh, you're pretending to be Billy Bob Thornton, and it's like, well, Rita's kind of, I mean, she's not really pretending to be anyone but herself. I mean, we don't know if her conditions, like, it's probably not as drastic as it is in, well, where it was in Doom Patrol. I mean, at least where we left off, she's in a better place now, so she's kind of found her purpose again. So, I don't know. And typically in the comics, if she has to, I mean, that might just be a Doom Patrol thing of her, like, her like, struggling with her form and everything, and that just, I mean, there's a lot of, once again, psychological trauma with Doom Patrol. Once again, superhero stuff is riddled trauma. Either way, I love that Billy Bob, Clayface as Billy Bob. It's like, no, it's me, Clayface, but no one cares because everyone's like, oh my god, Billy Bob Thornton, he's a shapeshifter. That's how he kills it with the rolls. And it's like, right, he can no longer even get the credit because it's all on Billy Bob's shoulders. And that's like very disheartening. And I love King Shark trying to give him a hug. He's like, I know this won't mean much, but here, how about a hug? And he's like, you're right, it doesn't mean as much. You're like, oh, poor Clayface. What this means for him going forward is definitely going to be interesting. Either way, so I love Joker rolling up at the premiere being like, hey, and it seems like, I guess Swamp Thing and Nora are now a thing more so. It's like, oh, after everything that went down in New Orleans, I guess it's like, oh, I guess they circle back around to each other. Maybe, I guess Nora was willing to give that a shot. I don't know. Or maybe it's just like we're keeping it super casual. But either way, that was kind of neat. And now it comes down to like, okay, we're going to kill the Joker. And he's like, wait, is this Lex getting at me for the lair tax? It's like 0.5%. And it's like, that's some villainous shit. I mean, but I'm sure that's even more of a commentary of like, oh, even if it's 1%, it's like, I'm not giving up any of my money for, it's like, fuck taxes, so it's like, it's probably something of that nature of like, I'm sure that's a deeper commentary of like, yeah, even 0.5% increase is like, but that's still 0.5%. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not giving up any of my money, so, but I did like that interesting, like, bonding that Ivy and Joker did, where it's this interesting thing. It's very much like the whole, and I think it's kind of coming full circle where Ivy in episode 3 had to confront her, well, she didn't really talk to Kite Man. That was more so Harley. So I think it's kind of an interesting inverse where it's like, right, Ivy talked to, Kite Man's new girlfriend, Golden Glider. And now she's talking to, and where Harley had to talk to her ex, now the roles are reversed where it's like, right, in one facet of her just talking to the Joker, and then both comparing like, oh my god, like the fact is she can't, like when she's throwing out the cardboard, she just leaves it one big box instead of breaking it down, which I'm like, that is kind of an annoying thing to do. It's like, just break it down. And I love it. It's like, yeah, you have your back, just break it down. And so they're just talking about the little things of like, oh yeah, like she has this fear of running out of toilet paper, which I'm like, I can understand that fear to some extent, but I'm like, that is such an interesting Harley fear. And she's there to kind of help support Bruce because Bruce is like freaking out. And he's the one commentating on like, right, she has changed. She's a hero. He's like, yeah, like I thought you were Agent of Chaos, but you're actually trying to help people. She's like, no, I am a villain. And it's like, because she's so not really sure about herself. And so once again, she's like overcompensating. And her being helpful to Bruce, he's like, did you tell anyone? He's like, no, like, the fact of the matter is, she's like, I actually recognize the good that you do as Batman now, but also, it's like, right, we got the doctor-patient confidentiality, so I won't tell anyone. I'm like, that's super dope. And the fact is, she also, it's kind of sad, she's kind of keeping that from Ivy, but I'm sure Ivy would understand. It's like, well, it is a doctor-patient thing, and it's like, right, the guy's kind of going through a lot of trauma. It's also like, well, this is also the guy that kidnapped Frank, so fuck him, so I'm sure that's kind of like Ivy's mindset on that. But either way, I also did love that Selena showed up, and he was like, whoa, you're here? She's like, yeah, I figured, I'm surprised you're here, considering. He's like, yeah, well, there's all of this, plus the whole, like, zombie apocalypse thing I kind of inadvertently calls, so she's like, right, we might not be dating, and I do think you're sad, but I do want you to be happy. And I was like, oh, that's really sweet. And then she's staring at the pearls. I was like, come on, Selena. I was like, that's the biggest dick move you can do if you're going to literally steal his mother's pearl at the movie premiere that's all about his parents' murder. Which I also love that they gave, well, and I don't know if this is, once again, me reading it too much into anything. The fact is they made it so that Thomas was fighting back. I want to say, what was it, Fat Man Beyond, that Kevin and I talked about that. And I'd have to rewatch it. I didn't really think much of it. That the fact is that he was saying, like, the Jeffrey Dean Morgan's Thomas Wayne was kind of just different in the regards of he was ready to fight. Because typically, I think most stuff just kind of like, oh, Thomas is trying to protect the family. But it's like, nah, he's ready to go. If need to protect this family, I'm ready to jump on you and kill you. Like, a lot of instances, like, he's ready to duke it out. It's like, Kevin had pointed that out, and I was like, oh, that's such an interesting thing. I never really, was it him, or I think maybe he pointed it out, or someone, he said someone else pointed it out, and he had never realized that before, maybe. But I thought that was such an interesting perspective on that. I was like, I'd have to go back and check that out, because I guess I never thought about it at the time. I don't know if that's something that's even in your, because I'm sure that was a Batman v Superman thing, because that scene was only in Batman v Superman. I'd have to go back. I've seen Batman v Superman once, so I don't know if I don't remember that necessarily, but I thought that was such an interesting, like, perspective on that. So I'd be so curious. The fact is Clayface was playing into also the line of, yeah, that mustache costs $12 million. I'm like, okay, it's like the joke about CGIing. It's the reverse of CGIing Henry Cavill's mustache for the theatrical Justice League. I get that. So either way. But I went in this whole tangent, so I do need to circle back around. But like it was me just going back to the Ivy and Joker thing. It is that thing of like, right, when have you ever known Harley to forget her bat? The fact of the matter is she's evolved, she's changed, she's not the same person, which is good. People should evolve and should change, and it shows how much she's grown, that she isn't just that same person anymore. And like Ivy realizes like, oh, I have like subconsciously just been letting her like go with the flow of like, it is kind of like, you know, their relationship is better. It's supposed to be good because they are partners in this. It isn't just like a one-sided thing, like, oh, you have to go along with, you know, like, not every partner needs to agree and like everything. And, you know, and that's fine. Like, I mean, obviously having some commonality is good, but like, once again, Harley based everything on like, okay, I need to go along. Me and Ivy have to be 100% on the same page with everything, because if we're not, our relationship's going to fall apart. But she's like, no, like, the fact is, like, I've been here, like, you know, ride or die, right? Like, I'm going to be by your side. Like, we'll just kind of have to approach this so differently. And it's like, well, what about the whole Legion of Doom thing? It's like, Lex is going to want me even more after not killing the Joker. I'm sure he's going to even want me even more now after this. So that is going to be an interesting and complicated parallel, like making that work going forward, like her being like super status villain. I mean, and then like Harley being like, yeah, I don't know if I want to help people or not. And yeah, maybe I'm not a villain anymore, but she's like, I mean, obviously labels are so lame. Cause I mean, I don't know if Harley is more anti-hero. I mean, obviously like even in the movie, she leans way more anti-hero. I mean, obviously like her like, you know, at least Margot's portrayal of her has been very like anti-hero, from the Suicide Squad to Birds of Prey to, you know, which is interesting too, considering like she is like rolling deep with heroes. I'm sure like maybe that's kind of very close to who she is in the comics, but it's like in my head I've always still saw Harley as, I mean, to be fair, they were causing mayhem, death, and destruction just earlier this season, but I guess it's like, right, it is earlier this season, like she has kind of pulled back on the villainy. I mean, aside from like helping helping Ivy, and as I guess they haven't really gone out of their way to just like needlessly kill people. So, oh right, because she did kill the Mad Hatter just to prove Barbara wrong, you know. So I think that's the most recent example of that. But I do love that Joker's whole thing is like, right, the movie's almost over, and the whole thing was a ploy to, he's the one, which is actually very maniacal to know that he's the one that sent the ticket so that Bruce would show up. So, I mean, at least you had probably a big say in making it so that Bruce would show up, because they're like, cool, we're arresting you because you're part of the 1% and you've been avoiding taxes, which I think is interesting, because I think this is kind of playing a little bit into, maybe the stories come up in the comics, but I know Batwoman, the show, dealt with this storyline to some extent of like, oh yeah, Wayne Enterprises has like this amount of money that is kind of being put into this other account. It's like all the stuff related to like the Bat stuff. There was kind of the money was kind of being funneled into that, and it looks like embezzlement, so that ended up being a whole story point in Batwoman. And I think this is kind of that same point of like, oh, you're not giving money, you're not paying your taxes. It's like, well, I think it's two separate things, but I think it's also like, well, probably can't really tax the money he's using to be Batman, but it's still probably should. I mean, I guess he's just avoiding taxes in general. But Bruce goes along with it because he's like, right, he's like, he thinks he is going to be okay and it's going to be hard. And like, Harley's like, no, I'll be there for you. Like any like Zoom calls or whatever. And Bruce appreciates that, but it's also like, yeah, Selena's kind of walking away with your mom's pearls. He's like, oh, come on. But she does sneak them back into his pocket. So she's like, yeah, I'm not going to kick a puppy while they're down or something. I mean, you shouldn't be kicking a puppy in general, but still, it's a fucked up metaphor I went with there, but you get the point. But, and passing the torch on to Barbara, which I'm thinking about it too much. I'm like, oh, the timing on that's kind of sucks, because it's like, because we're not getting the Batgirl movie, and now it's like, oh yeah, like it's kind of on you to, like, just the timing's interesting. I mean, they didn't write that on purpose. It was like, once again, this has already been written well before that happened, but it's just like, man, the timing on that's so interesting. Like, oh, like Batgirl's going to be kind of leading Gotham. But it's like, no. He's like, I need to, because she's like, oh, we'll like break you out, Blackgate or whatever. He's like, no. Gotham needs to be shown that they can, even Bruce Wayne can be held accountable. They need to know that there are consequences even for me. So I will serve my time and also use this time to heal. I can be a better person and come out stronger of this and get back to what I want to do, help people and save Gotham. And he leaving it up to Barbara. It's like, because you've already proven that you're ready for this job. I mean, you stopped the Mad Hatter and you stopped me when in the whole zombie apocalypse when I was indisposed. So it's all on your shoulder. And I thought that was beautiful, him passing the torch. So, and in the end, Harley and Ivy being able to kind of work through things and still come in. Once again, it's still going to be a struggle, but I mean, every relationship's about, once again, about compromise and having it find their way forward is definitely going to be interesting. I think it's fascinating that she's got her rolling deep with the, I'm curious as that, I mean, it's almost interesting because was that last episode? No, it was episode 8. The whole, her working along, kind of playing the role of a Robin in Batman's mind. Also, I've never seen the movie, but Batman and Harley Quinn. I'm like, isn't that kind of, I mean, them teaming up? I don't know what that. Once again, because I just always see her as a villain in my head, but I'm like, right. I'm sure it isn't just the Margot Robbie stuff. She probably definitely leans very anti-hero in the comics. I mean, hell, even during the Injustice storyline, to be fair, a lot of roles got switched in that storyline. So her kind of being kind of on the more right side of things. Because I think she's Team Batman, and it's like Team Superman's more in the wrong, Team Batman's more in the right when it comes to the Injustice storyline. But still. So she's kind of shown she's kind of more Team Bats in the long run in the grand scheme of things anyway, in different instances of the storylines I'm aware of, so. But her kicking it with, and it's just kind of like, oh, what are you doing, Harley? She's like, oh, I'm going to give you guys a hand. And it's like, don't worry, you still got the greatest butt on the team, Nightwing. It's like, I think we should give her a chance. So that's got to be weird. But they're grappling, hooking away, and it's like, cool, just kind of go without me, you assholes. So she's going to have to take the stairs. I don't have the whole gadgets and equipment, but that's going to be interesting, seeing how that plays out going forward. I'm so curious. First and foremost, what's up with Gordon? We haven't seen him since, what was that, episode 6 or 7 about Joker as the mayor. That's the last time we saw him, so I'm curious. I'm assuming Dr. Psycho's back in prison. Obviously, Harley still owes him that episode of, I'm sure they haven't really had time to record that yet, so I'm sure that's going to potentially come up, and I'm sure he's going to enjoy, because he's going to Blackgate, he's not going to Arkham, is he? So I was about to say, he'd be quite the pull for Psycho to get for his podcast, but we'll see. I'm so curious to see what next season looks like, considering everyone's circumstances. I'm sure we'll lean in, probably pop in every once in a while with King Shark's a whole thing of, it feels like I said King Shark, and his whole circumstances of him kind of ruling things now and what that kind of looks like, and Gotham with Harley Quinn and the Bat family kind of running things. What happens to Gordon now that it's he's not commissioner, he's also not mayor, so what that all kind of looks like. We pop in with Bruce getting some help, Ivy with the Legion of Doom, so many storyline elements. It's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward. Obviously, the show was renewed for a 4th season, which was kind of, it's because it was a big concern, because you're we don't know where a lot of DC property stuff stands, all across the board. Not just HBO Max, obviously, once again, there's the CW conversation too, especially with things kind of being whittled down to the final season of The Flash, Stargirl. If you kept up, you've kept up. So, but it's nice knowing we're getting at least a 4th season. If there's anything beyond that or not, whether this ends up being the final season. I don't know if anything's official's been said on that. Looking into it, there's no news on that front. I mean, at the very least, we're getting a season 4, so that's good enough for now. But I hope we're not seeing the end of the show anytime soon. But we're getting a season 4, so that's something to be happy about at the very least. So I'm excited to see where season 4 takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.